Have you ever looked at your phone, maybe on a quiet Sunday afternoon, and wondered why it hasn't rung? No message from your son, no call from your daughter, just silence. It's strange, isn't it? How someone you once carried, once fed, once held through sleepless nights can grow so distant, so casual about your presence. I know how painful that can be. And if you're nodding right now, if this touches something deep inside you, I want you to know, you are not alone. This video isn't about blaming your children or telling you to be cold. It's about quietly shifting the balance. About becoming the kind of parent, no, the kind of person, your child genuinely fears losing. Not because you guilt them, not because you yell or demand, but because your presence is that valuable, that magnetic, that rare. As we age, something unexpected happens. We start giving more than we should, trying harder to hold on to connections that once came naturally. Maybe you're the one always calling first. Maybe you rearrange your day just to spend an hour with them, or to watch the grandkids while they run errands. And yet, there's that uneasy feeling that you're being taken for granted, that you could disappear for a few days, and they might not even notice. Let's change that. Let's start with something simple but powerful, creating space. It sounds counterintuitive, right? You might think, but if I pull back, won't I lose them even more? Actually, the opposite often happens. When you're always available, always the first to reach out, always saying yes, it sends a message that you'll always be there. No urgency, no fear of absence. But when you begin to step back, not dramatically, just quietly, you let them feel the contrast. You let them notice your silence. You give them the gift of missing you. I'm not talking about cutting off contact. I'm talking about holding back just enough for them to feel the shift. Skip that weekly check-in once in a while. Don't offer to babysit every time. Leave some space. And when they reach out, when they feel that small tug of, I haven't heard from mom in a bit, or dad didn't offer to help like he usually does, that's when the fear of losing you begins to stir. They start to realize that your presence isn't something they can assume. It's something they want to hold on to. This leads naturally into the second strategy, guarding your time. You see, we've been conditioned, especially as parents, to believe that sacrifice is love, that dropping everything for our children is noble. And sure, there's beauty in being there when it matters. But when your time is always theirs, it stops feeling valuable. If every call is answered instantly, if every ask is granted without question, you're training them to believe you have nothing more important going on. And that chips away at the very respect that nurtures meaningful connection. So how do you fix that? You start by scheduling your own life first. Maybe it's a book club, a walking group, a class you've always wanted to take. Fill your calendar with things that feed your spirit. Let your children see that you are busy, not just available. When they ask if you can help on Thursday, and you say, I actually have a commitment that day, it sends a message. A gentle, dignified message. I have a life too. This isn't about being selfish. It's about being seen. When your time is protected, your presence feels more valuable. When they know they can't always get you on demand, they begin to prioritize you. They make the effort. They call ahead. They think twice before canceling. And slowly, you stop feeling like a convenience and start feeling like a gift. Let me share a story with you. A woman I spoke with recently, her name is Darlene, had 3 adult children. All wonderful people, but like many adult kids, they had their own lives, their own schedules. Darlene, being the generous soul she was, would always say yes. Babysitting? Yes. Last-minute grocery run? Of course. Hosting holidays even when she was exhausted? Without question. But over time, she felt more like a background character in their lives than the central figure she once was. So one day, she did something different. She began saying, "Let me check my schedule." She started going to a local art class, joined a walking group in her neighborhood. She even booked a weekend away with old friends. And do you know what happened? Her kids started calling more. They asked her advice more often. They noticed her energy, her glow, and they told her, without her even asking, "We really miss you when you're not around." That's what happens when you reclaim your time. It doesn't drive people away, it pulls them closer. And finally, for today, I want to talk about uncertainty. It's a word that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially later in life. We crave stability, reassurance. But in relationships, a little uncertainty can actually create emotional gravity. When your child knows, without a shred of doubt, that you'll always forgive, always help, always say yes, then slowly they stop working to earn your closeness. That emotional effort fades. But when there's just a little unpredictability, when they don't always know what you're thinking, when they can't quite guess what you'll say or do, that keeps their attention. It stirs curiosity. And with curiosity comes respect. You don't have to become mysterious or cold. You just have to stop explaining everything. Let them wonder a little. If they ask why you're busy this weekend, smile and say, "Just a little something I've got going on." Let them feel that you're not just orbiting their lives. You have a universe of your own. When people wonder, they pay attention. And when they pay attention, they start to value what they might lose. I know some of this might sound bold, maybe even uncomfortable, but it's not about playing games. It's about shifting the emotional weight of the relationship back into balance. You've spent a lifetime loving your children. That doesn't stop. But now you also get to love yourself, and that more than anything is what teaches them to fear losing you. Let's keep going, because there's more to say. You see, once you begin creating space and guarding your time, something shifts, not just in your children, but in you. You start to remember who you were before you became everything to everyone else. And that memory, that quiet rediscovery of your own worth, is what begins to radiate outward. People can feel it, especially those closest to you. That brings us to the next strategy, subtle but powerful, letting them see that you have options. Now, I know we're not talking about dating or running off to start a brand new life. That's not the point. This is about reminding your children that you are still someone other people enjoy, admire, and appreciate. When your world gets small and they become your only point of connection, the dynamic starts to tilt. It becomes too easy for them to assume you'll always be there, that you need them more than they need you. But when they see that your phone rings with calls from friends, when they hear that you're going out to dinner, that you were invited to a gathering, or that someone asked your advice, they start to view you with new eyes. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Maybe it's something as simple as joining a local community group, or taking part in a church committee, or volunteering somewhere that matters to you. These are all ways of showing, without ever having to say it, that your presence is still in demand. And believe me, when your children sense that others value your time, they begin to value it more too. It stirs something inside them, a quiet awareness that they don't want to be left behind in your affections, that you are not waiting around for their crumbs of attention. You are living. One gentleman told me his grown daughter never used to make time to visit, until she saw him on Facebook posing with friends from a travel club he'd joined. Suddenly she was more curious, more attentive. She asked more questions. She wanted to be part of his life again. And why? Because he had reminded her, gently and respectfully, that she was not his entire world. And when a parent has a life of their own, the child starts to remember that this is someone worth keeping close. It leads beautifully into the next truth, and this one is big. Don't be too easy to figure out. Now I know, many of us were raised to believe that honesty and transparency are always best. And in many ways, they are. But in close relationships, especially ones where you've been overgiving or chasing approval, too much predictability can lead to complacency. Think of it like this. If every single time your child calls, You answer on the first ring with the same warm tone, the same stories, the same rhythm. After a while, they stop leaning in. They stop wondering what's going on with you because they already think they know. So switch it up just a little. Let them be curious. Share a new interest without explaining every detail. If they ask, say, "It's just something I've been exploring lately," and leave it at that. When you go out, don't always volunteer where you went or with whom. Not because you're hiding, but because you're reminding them you have a private inner life, a world of your own, something they don't fully control or understand. And that's healthy. That keeps connection alive. When someone feels they've completely figured you out, their emotional attention drifts. But when there's still more to learn, when you have layers, surprises, new angles, they stay invested. They want to keep earning access to you. And that's exactly what creates emotional value. Which brings us to something most parents struggle with, especially the kind-hearted ones. Stop over-explaining yourself. This is a hard one. When you say no to a request, maybe your child wants a favor, or to borrow money, or for you to cancel your plans for them, there's this urge to defend your decision. I can't because I'm tired. I can't because I already promised someone else. I can't because... But let me offer you this instead. You don't owe anyone an elaborate explanation for protecting your peace. When you explain too much, it sounds like you're asking for permission. And whether you mean to or not, it lowers your energy. It signals uncertainty. But when you simply say, "That won't work for me," or "I've got something going on that day," and then pause, that pause speaks volumes. It says, "I respect myself enough not to justify every choice." And slowly, your children start to respect that too. You see, respect is not built from constantly saying yes. It's built from quiet strength, from clear boundaries, from the dignity of someone who knows they don't have to please everyone to be loved. When my friend George finally told his son, "I won't be available to help with the move, I have plans that weekend," he braced himself for pushback. But do you know what happened? His son said, "Oh, okay, Dad, I'll figure it out." And he did. George told me later, "I realized I was afraid of disappointing him, but I never stopped to ask if it was okay for me to have a life too." Sometimes what your child needs most isn't more of your help. It's the example of your self-respect. You've given your heart, your time, your energy for years, decades. And it's okay now to choose peace over pressure, joy over obligation. And in doing so, you become more magnetic, not less. More respected, not forgotten. Now that we've spent some time reflecting on how to create space, reclaim time, and restore balance, let's keep the momentum going. Because there's still something else, something powerful, that can tilt the dynamic in your favor without ever raising your voice or making demands. Let's talk about that next. By now, you're beginning to sense it. That quiet shift in power, not through control or manipulation, but through dignity, through presence. And that brings us to something that surprises a lot of people. Your child should be investing more into the relationship than you do. I know how that might sound at first, maybe even a little harsh. But stay with me. Think about the relationships in your life, the ones that felt lopsided, where you were always the one calling, always the one visiting, always the one doing the emotional lifting. How did those relationships feel? Draining, right? Uneven. The truth is, the person who gives the most with the least in return often ends up resented, not respected. Why? Because human nature tells us this: we value what we work for. And the same goes for your child. When your child puts in effort, when they call first, ask how you're doing, offer to help, invite you over, it changes everything. Not just because it feels good, though it does, but because it shifts the emotional balance. They begin to feel invested in you. And with investment comes attachment. With attachment comes care. And with care comes the quiet, unspoken fear of losing someone you love. But if you're always the one doing all the giving, while they sit comfortably receiving, that urgency fades. They may love you, but they don't feel the need to show it. And love, unexpressed, can begin to feel cold. So what do? You stop trying so hard. You pull back, not out of anger, not out of punishment, but out of peace. You give only what is freely reciprocated. If they call, you answer. If they visit, you welcome them. But you stop chasing. You stop overextending. You let them feel what it's like to reach toward you, instead of always waiting for you to reach toward them. And something beautiful begins to happen. They rise to meet you. Maybe slowly, maybe imperfectly, but they start to feel the weight of the relationship in their own hands. And that weight is good. That weight is love. Real love. The kind that honors both people, not just the one who gives the most. A gentleman once told me his daughter hadn't called in over a month. He always made the first move. Texted first. Reached out. So, one day, he decided not to. He focused on his garden, took long walks, joined a cooking class at the local community center. 2 weeks later, she called and said, "Dad, I kept waiting to hear from you, and then I realized, I miss you." That's the moment it shifted. Because absence is a teacher. It tells people what presence really meant. But let me be clear. This isn't about being cold or distant. It's about being intentional. It's about remembering that your time, your energy, your wisdom, they are gifts, not givens. And when your child senses that, when they truly grasp your worth, not just as a parent, but as a person, they will fear losing you. And that fear is healthy. It inspires action. It creates reverence. So let's take a moment right here, right now, to breathe in that truth. You matter. Not because of what you do for others, not because you say yes, not because you're always there. You matter because you are a whole person, a soul, a story. And the more you live like someone who knows that, the more others will treat you that way. Let's remember something else too. Relationships are living things. They grow, they change. Sometimes they bloom, sometimes they wither, but they respond to care, to space, to attention, and yes, sometimes to silence. It's okay to let silence speak for you now and then. It's okay to let someone miss you. It's okay to stop filling every gap in your child's life. Sometimes the best way to draw someone closer is to take one quiet step back. And if they don't come, if they don't notice, if they never return your effort, then you'll know. And even though that truth may hurt, it will also free you. Because no one should have to earn the bare minimum of love. You deserve more than crumbs. You deserve joy, connection, reciprocity. And if it doesn't come from your child now, it might later. Or it might come from unexpected places, from neighbors, friends, new communities. Life has a way of bringing light through doors you didn't expect to open. So don't close your heart. Just guard it better. Let me leave you with this. The fear of losing someone isn't something you can force. It's something you inspire simply by being someone worth holding on to. Not by giving endlessly, but by living fully. Not by waiting, but by growing. And when your child sees that, sees your strength, your peace, your quiet confidence, they'll feel it in their bones. I can't afford to lose this person. They'll step up. They'll draw near. They'll start making the effort that once only came from you. And if you've already been doing this work, if you've been standing a little taller, smiling a little more, reclaiming small parts of your life, keep going. You're not just changing your relationship. You're changing your legacy. One of quiet strength, self-respect, and dignity. If this message spoke to you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What have you tried? What's worked? Where are you still struggling? We're a community here, and your story might be the light someone else needs today. And if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. We've got more heartfelt, real, and empowering conversations ahead. Because you deserve to feel seen, heard, and valued. Here's to standing tall, to loving fiercely but wisely, and to being the kind of parent no child ever wants to lose. You've earned it.